Hi, I'm Erin Power.
And I'm Laura Rupsis.
We're certified health coaches, and this is Health Coach Radio.
This podcast is about the art, science, and business of health coaching.
We share our insider tips to help you become a better coach and entrepreneur.
And we interview expert guests to discover how they've made it in this growing field.
It's time for health coaches to make an impact.
It's time for Health Coach Radio.
Our guest today is Hope Pedraza, a certified holistic nutritionist, functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, Pilates instructor, studio owner, and the host of the Hopeful and Wholesome podcast. Hope helps driven women to heal their gut with a plant-focused diet and functional nutrition. She specializes in plant-based nutrition per her own journey with a plant-focused diet and having healed her own digestion, immune system, and so much more. But she doesn't teach how to be vegan, rather how putting an emphasis on plant-based meals can massively transform the microbiome's health. We mostly wanted to pick Hope's extremely business-oriented brain around running two different successful businesses in the health and wellness space at the same time. Her Pilates studio, which she recently franchised, and her health coaching practice. On a personal note, this is one heck of a fun way to scale your health and wellness income. If you have passions in more than one health area, do more than one thing. Cobbling together a nice income from multiple channels is an idea worth exploring if you, like Hope, are a multifaceted individual with a lot of different ideas to teach. In this episode, we talk about running an online and brick-and-mortar business at the same time, the main differences, strategies, and lessons along the way, growing a franchise from the ground up, and growing two businesses during a global pandemic. Lots of really good business talk in this one, so listen up. Our show's sponsor is Primal Pro. We've educated and certified thousands of health coaches, and we know that one of the greatest hurdles to getting started with a coaching practice is getting started with a coaching practice. I don't know where to start is the most common refrain we hear from new coaches. And we want health coaches out in the world making an impact and doing what they do best. To save you time, effort, stress, and unnecessary blocks, we've taken care of the program development for you. Introducing Primal Pro, a fully customizable health coaching app with a 12-week ancestral health program built right in. Simply subscribe to the app, enroll your clients, and the app takes care of nurturing your client through 12 weeks of proven diet, movement, and lifestyle education. This lets you do what you do best, coaching. You and your clients will communicate with each other through the app, staying on top of their struggles and successes as they go. Learn more about Primal Pro at primalhealthcoach.com/primalpro. We're on Instagram, and so are you, and so is everybody. So as you're listening to your favorite episodes of Health Coach Radio, take a screen grab of your podcast player and tag us in your stories at Health Coach Radio. Don't forget the show notes for every single episode of Health Coach Radio can be found at primalhealthcoach.com/radio. Without further delay, we are excited for you to dive into today's episode and get inspired to build a business or two that you love. Please welcome our guest, Hope Pedraza.
Hope Pedraza, thanks for joining us. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh my gosh. We love talking to other coaches, don't we, Erin?
Yeah.
We love hearing about all your practice and how you got things going. We always gain some inspiration coming out of these conversations. So if you wouldn't mind just sharing your backstory a bit, 3-5 minute backstory on Hope and sort of how you got where you are.
Yeah. So I'm a holistic nutritionist and I'm an FDNP. And then I also am the founder of a brick-and-mortar Pilates based fitness franchise. And so my background is in dance, which is what got me into Pilates and fitness and all that. And after having my studio for a little while, I've really always been interested in nutrition and just the human body and all of that. But after having my studio for a while, I realized that, people coming into my studio, the missing piece really was the nutrition piece, right? I would hear them talking to each other and trying all these things. And I'm like, this is not the way to do things. And so I decided to kind of, go on my own nutrition journey with, certifications and all that. Ended up going into like an extensive holistic nutrition program and then expanding into the FDNP program. But just really initially, it was just to offer the people coming into my brick and mortar studio just more of like a comprehensive approach to their wellness, right? Giving them that nutrition piece. And then Really, it was kind of before COVID, and COVID kind of pushed me into it, like it did a lot of other people, into that online space, and really growing that as like a separate entity. So yeah.
Wow, that's a lot. Good for you. It's so interesting that you share that sort of one of your influences was being in the Pilates studio, just being in the fitness world and hearing people talk about nutrition and just how bewildered they are.
Yes.
I can really relate to that. I just think about the times I spent in gym change rooms where I would hear these ladies are talking about their 30-day sugar detox.
Yes.
These ladies are trying keto. These ladies
Yes.
are doing whatever smoothies and juice cleanses. So what were you hearing, and what's
I mean,
yeah.
It was a lot of that. And I'd hear, it was, all the fad stuff. And then I would hear, because the other thing, I had a backstory here. It's just like totally a little bit off topic, but I had a really bad relationship with food growing up. I was like borderline eating disorder and all of that. And so that's also kind of been my journey too, is getting past that and eating, to nourish my body and all of that. So I would hear that kind of stuff too, where ladies were basically just like completely punishing their bodies and going on these really intense, like restrictive diets. And I'm like, why are you doing this to yourself? So being able to, I guess it's kind of twofold, being able to, yes, kind of approach like what you're saying, all the people trying all of this, these fads and this and that, where it's like, none of that's sustainable. None of it's going to work for you. And then at the same time, like teaching people how to nourish their body, and take care of their body rather than punishing their body.
Yeah. It's such an uphill climb though, I find. I don't know.
Totally.
Not that it's an uphill climb. I don't want this to be like a discouraging conversation, but only because in diet and fitness culture, this sort of this instant gratification, quick fix mentality is so prevalent. And so to take people who are having these like, oh, I'm jumping into this smoothie detox. This is what I'm trying now, and say, hey, what if instead you just like understood how your body used fuel and learned how to nourish it? It's like, what? Like, it's so important.
It is. It's like a novel concept. And that's really, that's part of the challenge I've had. And I think we've done a good job, just as far as at least the messaging for my studio is like, hey, we take a sustainable approach, because we talk about that with our classes too. It's sustainable fitness, it's functional, it's for all levels and all that. But I think we try to take that approach with, the nutrition side of things too. Whereas it's like, if you're coming for a quick fix, this isn't the place for you kind of thing, like we're for sustainable fitness or for sustainable nutrition, all that. Cause you're right. It's definitely a tough battle, tough conversation with people.
Yeah. I started out health coaching first because it was food that fixed me. And then opened a gym after the fact, because I thought, gee, maybe if I open a fitness business, then I would find myself with a population of people that cared about their health, that are going to want to change their food. That didn't turn out to be true, right? Didn't turn out to be true. I literally had to tell a client of mine, please stop tagging me in pictures of your pancake breakfast about carb loading after your CrossFit class, because I would never in a million years recommend that. He's like,
oh my gosh,
what do you mean? And then I'm like, okay, so clearly I have this subset of people that are coming in because they're trying to, they keep saying they're trying to stay lean and fit, but really what they're doing is they're trying to out-train their diet, and they don't really, I've told, and I'm like, look, this is coming from a fitness person. Like, I love to train. I love that stuff. I don't like quote unquote exercising or working out. I like training for something, I have a goal. So, anyway, it's just a mindset switch. But at the end of the day, what I'll tell people is if you have to work out in order to not gain weight, then there's something wrong.
There's something wrong. Right. Exactly.
There's something wrong. And so I want to tap back to a term you used, which is nourish. People will often use the term fueling if they're like in the fitness space or what have you. And like better quality fuel, I guess, but just fueling, does that necessarily satiate you? Does it leave you feeling fulfilled and happy versus nourishing you?
Totally. Yeah.
It's amazing the way words have an impact, just the way we phrase things.
For sure. Yeah. And it definitely does, because I think that was really, and some people, different things, ways of saying things appeal to them. But for me, and especially in like healing my relationship with food and all of that, that was the word that like triggered me. It was like kind of a light bulb moment at some point where it was like, am I nourishing myself? Like, I guess I'm really not, it was like you're saying, like I would eat just enough to fuel me. Right. So I wouldn't like completely pass out at some point during the day, but it like, was it really nourishing me? Like, and did that. And then, looking back now, I was actually just working on some content around this, like personal story, but thinking back like, oh, hey, there's probably a reason that I get colds a lot during the year. And there's probably a reason that I'm like hungry most of the day. Like, just putting those things together, were like the nourishment piece was totally the piece I was missing.
Yeah. I want to just jump in, like, 'cause I'm geeking out on this too. I recently came across this line of thinking, and maybe I'm like way late to the party on this, but it was like this. And like, Laura, you mentioned the word, like this idea of satiety or satiating, this idea of satiety, like we're trying to satiate a hunger, but why did the cells or the body why did they kick out that hunger signal in the first place? Anyway, we always thought for the longest time, it's like, well, the cells need energy, they need fuel to make energy. But actually this whole idea around like mineral requirements and amino acid complement in the blood is actually the leverage point for the satiety signal. It actually has nothing to do with fuel. By the way, you have hundreds of thousands of calories of fuel on your body.
Right.
So this whole idea of like, maybe the hunger cue isn't even for fuel anyway, and just sort of exploring the other elements of food that nobody talks about.
Right? Yep. Absolutely. I totally agree.
Yeah. Pretty cool. All right. So you are a holistic nutritionist. I did a new holistic nutrition credential too, and FDNP, so functional nutritionist, FDNP, functional diagnostic nutritionist. Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Got it. So how do you use your trainings in your practice?
Yeah, good question. So I started out, I did like just like a basic nutrition coaching program like years and years ago. And then just before COVID, I decided to go like do the more extensive holistic nutrition program. It was like this big, long 2-year thing. I think for me, as the more I saw, and again, this was me just basing it off my brick and mortar studio, because that's all I was doing at the time. I didn't have like this online component really, but the more I saw people, the more I had clients, more I, saw people, the more I wanted to be able to just wanted to reach them at like a deeper level. So I just kept wanting to, expand my education and my knowledge on things. And not to say that you have to have, 50 credentials and certifications to be a successful nutrition coach. I think that's a good point that I really want your listeners to hear too, is I think a lot of people wait for all like, well, I need to get this one and then this and this. And then they just keep, they get in that cycle of getting all these things and they never start. So point is, you don't have to get all of those, but for me, I enjoyed the process of learning. I enjoyed being able to reach my clients at a deeper level. And so with my holistic nutrition certification, reaching them at a holistic level, right? So looking at the whole body with the FDNP, I really loved being able to go to like the deepest level with like the functional labs and screenings. And instead of, granted, there's still plenty of opportunities as a holistic nutritionist to look at, the whole person and kind of figure out what's going on. But with FDN program, you're really able to not have to guess, right? You can really pinpoint it based on the labs and stuff. And so I really liked that aspect of the FDN program, being able to like combine the two and reach them at a deeper level with those lab results and being able to pinpoint things a little more accurately.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. So how do you navigate that from a scope of practice point of view? We get a lot of questions here about labs and reading labs. And we have to be very careful about if that's what you want to offer in your practice, that's great, but it's not coaching, right? It's a different tool.
Right.
And just understand the laws of where you live and what you're allowed to do. I know, so I'm like the board president or whatever. I don't know how I landed on that for the Council for Holistic Health Educators. Okay. And this is something Jonathan's fighting for. Is really being able to understand kind of the role of using labs in the health coaching practice. I mean, he's fighting for a broader breadth to be able to do that. So I would love to hear kind of where you live and how this fits for just so that people listening can think, okay, so first of all, am I allowed to do this where I live?
Right.
If not, that's okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to have it.
Exactly.
To your point, right? And second of all, if I can, what's the best way to use this within my coaching?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm in Texas, and I know our laws are we don't have really strict laws. I know New York is very strict on a lot of things. Yeah. New York is very strict on a lot of things. There's a lot of labs that you can't run in the state of New York. Like if you have clients in New York, you can't send them, there's a lot of, and I'm not familiar with all the state's laws. I just know where I live. It's pretty lenient about stuff. And it's important too, obviously, I'm not a medical physician, right? And so I'm not diagnosing people. I'm not using these labs to diagnose people. And so making sure your clients are aware of that. Like, you're not using these lab results to diagnose anything. It's really just to give, a detailed look of what's going on in the body, and then using those lab results to create a protocol. So not diagnosing you with an autoimmune disorder, an allergy, or anything like that. And then two, knowing that, like, for example, there's like a GI mapping test that we run. And, if you do find pathogens or parasites, you give them a referral to a medical doctor, like, hey, we found this in your GI map, you might want to go see a doctor. So just knowing, like, when the opportunity arises, that you do refer them to like a medical professional to, kind of further the testing and take it from there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you encourage your client to go and get the test, or are you like ordering it for them?
Yeah. Order the test. Yeah. So I order the test. It goes directly to them. They do it at their house, send it back to the lab, and then I get the results.
Gotcha. I did one of those GI maps last summer. Not fun,
Yeah.
but interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, very interesting. Yes, yes. Yeah, that one scares people a lot, because they're like, okay, I'm telling you, it's a blood spot, and there's a urine test, there's a stool test. They're like, wait. So I have to do a stool test. Like, yes, you have to. Yeah, it's not pretty, but
it's worse than you think. It's worse than you think it's going to be. Worse.
It really is. It really is. Because I have to run all the labs and myself doing the program and stuff. And I might have done a stool test when I was like a kid, maybe, because I had a lot of GI stuff when I was a kid, but I don't really remember. And I'm reading directions and I'm like, wait, I have to do what now? Okay, well, this is fun.
Cool. So how do you arrive at what kind of tests you encourage for clients, or is it like every client kind of gets all the same ones, or do you do a little intake? And
yeah, there's a really extensive intake process for sure. So there's a lot of different things to fill out just to kind of get a good overview of what's going on in the body and like what their main complaints are and their main symptoms are. So with the FDN program, there's really 5 main ones that are like kind of the general tests that we run, but we have access to dozens of tests. So you're not really restricted to those 5, but it's usually 5. And it's the 5 are measuring like, steroid hormones, GI mapping, metabolic wellness markers like oxidative stress and intestinal permeability, things like that. So there's 5 main ones. But then 2, we're looking at the whole person. And so we're looking at the things that they're struggling with, the symptoms they've been dealing with, their medical history, and then making decision on if these are the 5 that would be best for this person, or maybe they need some of these other ones. So yeah, there's some flexibility there.
So could you give us an example? Because again, this is where we're going to get people that want detail. So, okay, so how do I have that conversation without sounding diagnostic? How do I like take a look at these labs and then use that from a language sort of programming point of view without bumping up against that sort of diagnostic note?
Yeah. No, that's a good question. So, and really we go over this a lot in the FDN program of like verbiage and wording and how you're approaching your clients and stuff, because you do have to be careful, especially in states where they're more strict about, regulations, stuff. You do have to be careful, but really how we're approaching it is, talking to the client and, we're not treating anything specifically. We're not treating the symptoms specifically. We're treating you as a whole person. We're going to look at the lab results. We're not treating the lab results. We're treating you as a person. And so that's kind of the language we're using, is that we treat everything non-specifically. Mm-hmm. So, whether you have these different things show up in your, GI mapping or whatever, you have these specific things going on with your estrogen levels. We're not going to treat specifically this. We're going to treat you as a whole person.
Yeah. I was thinking back to when I went to holistic nutrition school, and I don't know if you would have learned this in your schooling, but we use symptomatology. Mm-hmm. So very, very detailed client symptom self-assessment. So here's a huge list of symptoms, rank them on a scale of 1 to 3 in terms of frequency and severity. And then what these symptoms are, they're clustered into body systems. So it could be the intestinal system. It could be the endocrine system, these body systems, right? Mm-hmm. Liver, insulin resistance was a system. And then when we get these, if a cluster shows up, let's say a cluster shows up in the thyroid system, we're not going to say, hey, you've got a thyroid problem.
Right.
Instead, we'll say, you show symptoms that suggest an underactive thyroid, mm-hmm. or sluggish thyroid. Here's how we support a sluggish thyroid through nutrition and lifestyle. Right. So it's really honing the language.
Yep, exactly.
Right?
Yep.
Like that symptomatology piece is kind of a quasi-diagnostic-ish tool, purely based on the client's subjective experience, which I like. I actually do like the client to pay attention to what they feel like. But then still, we're still not saying, hey, you've got Hashimoto's, because I'm not going to say that to somebody. It's just language.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, what I like about that too is that that's the reason people are coming to you, is because of their own subjective experience about what they're feeling. So rather than, and here's the other thing I like about using different language like that, is rather than having my client identify as someone with an illness of some kind, oh, there's something wrong with my thyroid, or I have whatever thyroid issue. It's okay. How do I support my thyroid?
Right.
It's just a different kind of mindset. And we see this a lot of times with folks that are diabetic, that are obese, that have autoimmune conditions are big, right? I have Crohn's disease, or I'm a celiac, right? Like, no, you're not a celiac. You're a person that has that has this particular illness. So how can we help support the person, not treat the illness? And that's what I try to frame with my clients. I don't run tests. I have a kind of specific type of person that I work with. And, that person might have insulin resistance or what have you, but the conversation is, I'm not going to treat your illness.
Right.
What we're going to do is support you as a person and try to learn the behaviors and the habits and the choices that people that don't have that illness make. And the part of the reason they don't have that illness is because they're making different choices. Sometimes it's genetic, for sure. Okay. So woe is me, maybe it's in my genes, but at the end of the day, whether this thing really manifests itself, or the degree to which it manifests itself, is based on my choices, my behaviors and my habits. And that's what, we're going to kind of focus on. So kind of being able to speak the client's language in terms of the symptoms that they're feeling. I think even doctors and other practitioners need to do that more.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree. Well, and the thing is, when, when treating the symptoms, or when you're treating, to your example with the thyroid, okay, so something shows that maybe your thyroid is off of that. We really don't know what's caused that problem, right? Is it you have a sluggish liver and that's creating some sort of conversion issue? Do you have cellular damage that's creating, so there's so many things downstream that could be causing that. So if you're just going to treat the thyroid, you're really missing out on all these upper opportunities to heal things going on downstream.
Yeah, truly. That's actually what I liked about symptomatology, is that you could get a kind of zoomed out picture, your thyroid is showing up some cluster symptoms, but so is your liver.
Exactly.
There's something there, right? So rather than just kind of honing in, I do think that sometimes clients do that. They'll, I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but I'll have clients that say, I'm pretty sure my thyroid's not working. And it's like, well, what makes you say that? And it's just based on what they kind of colloquially know about thyroid.
Yes.
So having even the client, I think I've had clients tell me that filling out the symptom self-assessment was one of the most enlightening, eye-opening things, because they don't even realize some of these things are symptoms. Like, I just thought joint pain was normal, a part of aging, or
yes, totally. I get that all the time.
Like folks are just really disconnected from their bodies a lot of the time.
It's the awareness piece for sure.
Oh my gosh. So can you tell us a little bit about, okay, so you have this brick and mortar Pilates studio, and then you have your sort of nutrition. So the other side of that practice so I would love to hear how this is done as a business. Do you have just your Pilates clients and then just your sort of holistic health clients? Do you do this in combination? You've got people in person, people online. Like, that sounds like a lot of moving parts. Do you mind sharing with us how you manage all that?
Yeah, for sure. So I basically run it as two separate businesses, as two separate entities, but then there is and especially I've been working on this, going into the new year, especially, but really integrating the two more than I have been. But so, I have my brick and mortar and then I have my online. Now there is some crossover, because I have had clients that are my nutrition clients that are also, they've been to one of my studios or something. So there is some crossover there, but I do treat them as two separate businesses where, my online or my nutrition business is online. We do all of our sessions virtually, whatever. And then obviously the in-person with the brick and mortar. So, I like the dualities though. I like that it's obviously there's a lot of differences in running a brick and mortar business than an online business, but I like the dualities. I like, the two separate experiences. So for me, it's fun. And I like to be able to keep them separate and have them as, two separate businesses.
Cool.
Yeah.
So let's pick one. Let's pick, say, your online nutrition business. Who are you typically working with, and how do they work with you? Like, what's your programming like? How does it start?
Yeah.
Take us through it.
Yeah. So I really do more organic marketing and stuff. Like I don't really have a website. I have a blog, but I don't really send people to that. So I don't really have a website. It's mostly just through social media or, word of mouth or whatever. But yeah, so most people find me on social media and it's, Instagram or Facebook. I have a Facebook group and I, kind of use that to help nurture people. And, I've gotten a few clients from there, but really for the most part, it's people, seeing my stories or seeing posts or whatever, and then just messaging me and then we start talking about it. And then, and then it just ends up, they turn into clients. From there, I have, and I actually just changing this up for 2022, but I have some options for people because I found, for a long time, I just had like one, this is like my signature program. This is what I do. This is all I have. And then the more I talk to people, I realized that really people need help in different capacities. Like not everybody wants to do a really, intense 3 or 4 month program. Sometimes people don't really necessarily want to work with you long term. They just want to know what's going on in their body. They just want that piece of it. And so I've worked to create different programming in that way where it's like, okay, you want to just know what's going on in your body. So then let's run the labs, like give you a consult and now like you can do whatever you want with that information, right? I have some more self-guided programs that don't necessarily require me to give one-on-one, consults or whatever. And then I have the more in-depth programs where they're getting one-on-one sessions every other week. And we're looking at labs and we do run labs again at the end of the program to kind of check on progress, that kind of thing. So there's different ways people can work with me. And I like being able to offer the ability for people to work in different capacities. Because again, everybody needs something different.
Yeah. I love that you started out with one thing and you got really good at one thing. And then because you got really good at one thing, that creates the bandwidth for you to be able to fracture that a little bit to be able to offer pieces to other people. This is something we try to drive home all the time. And it's the number one reason why all my clients are unsuccessful is when they try to do too many things at once, right? Focus on one thing and get really good at that. Then you can add something else to the picture. You've earned the right to do that. And your business growth, no doubt, required it at some point.
Yeah.
Right.
Also, I'd like to also point out that you did it in the right order because you started with this big signature program and then broke it down from there. I think a lot of folks do it the other way around, and to me that feels backwards.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think people out of the gate try to, and this is going to lead us into one of the reasons we really wanted to talk to you. I think a lot of coaches go to business trying to appeal or appease too many people.
Yeah.
Rather than focusing on someone specific and really build an advocacy group for you, people that are way too broad. So I would love for you to speak to that and tell little people about kind of what your focus is, because I hear this from people. I don't want to pigeonhole myself. Don't think of it that way. Right? Think of it in terms of differentiating yourself. That's what we're trying to do. So if you
exactly
that, love it.
Yeah. And that was really my goal. So I specialize in plant-based nutrition, and it was just kind of a natural thing for me. I've been plant-based for, I don't know, maybe close to 10 years or so. And that was really, like I said, I'd always been interested in nutrition, but I think that really propelled me into learning more about nutrition in the body because I was able to heal my body with a plant-based diet. I grew up with a lot of really bad digestive issues and went to a bunch of doctors, and, it was like a whole thing growing up. And so that piece really helped transform my health. And so that it was like I was just naturally drawn to that side of things because I know what it could do for me. And I believe in the power of plant-based diet. But I will say, my programs are geared towards that, but really the people I work with aren't really looking to, and I say this in, my messaging and everything too. I'm not like teaching people how to be vegan. Like that's not my goal. My goal really is to show the power of a plant-based diet or a plant-focused diet is usually the wording that I use. Because let's be honest, most of us don't eat enough, plants. So I think that's really kind of the premise of it is, hey, let's get your body working on the right, using the right things in your body to heal your body. And so that was where the kind of the plant focused approach took. And really, I did want to use that to set myself apart because most people don't want to, specialize in, they don't, like you said, pigeonhole themselves. And so for me, it was like, well, this kind of differentiates me. And I've studied plant-based nutrition for long enough. I, did a plant-based specialized nutrition, whatever certification. So it's like, I want to be able to use that and incorporate that and use that to set myself apart. And I have to say, yeah, sure, it's going to turn some people away. Some people aren't interested in eating a plant-based diet or plant-focused or whatever, or they don't agree with my philosophy. But I also think that's also, you know, best practices as a practitioner is you want to attract the right people and repel the wrong people. So
Exactly.
that's my thoughts on it.
Oh, yes, completely agree. Yeah. So like what I heard you say is that plant-focused diet helped you heal. So you have this intimate knowledge and appreciation for it. And therefore it makes sense for you to practice in that way. Like,
Right,
it makes total
exactly.
sense. It wouldn't make sense for you to dabble in carnivore on the side.
Right, right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so, what I liked what you said is that, it's not going to be the approach for everybody. And that's fine. We really do want clients to be able to select into the care of a practitioner that they are spiritually aligned with in some way. And there are plenty of practitioners out there. We don't have to help every client. In fact, we shouldn't. It's really important to get. And then also, I just would like to point out, it's just way easier for yourself as a practitioner to do what you know.
Yeah.
You know what
For
I mean?
sure.
Like,
Absolutely. Well, and I think too, I've done so many programs. I've done so many programs and done all kinds of coaching things. And for me, I try to do how everybody else is doing it. Well, this is working for these people, so I'm going to do it this way. And then, I think over the last year, I've really become more in tune, like with myself and my intuition, and going with that and feeling what's more aligned for me. And for me, like you're saying, there is a sense of spiritual alignment, and I want to do that in my practice as well. I want to do what feels in alignment for me, and that's going to help me to serve my clients better, because I'm doing what I'm meant to do.
exactly. And on the flip side of that, who would want to do anything that they're spiritually misaligned with?
Totally.
Right? It doesn't make sense.
No, I love that. And here, I think this little snippet of our conversation is a prime example of what's wrong with public health generally, is that when you try to help too many people at once, you end up being ineffective for way too many people. And this goes back to why health care, wellness, fitness, it needs to be private. And people need choice, and they need the ability to choose the practitioner that they want to work with, and this goes back to sort of a lot of what the Holistic Council and some of the other advocacy groups are advocating for, which is consumer choice, right? If somebody has legitimately been harmed in one aspect of the healthcare system, like many of us have, they should have the choice to be able to work with a different practitioner. So I just love that. And there's so much room for so many voices. I would love to hear how you articulate your story and your philosophy. This is something that we teach the people that go through our program, is learning to lean into your story, what you're passionate about. And we're trying to teach them a way to tell it in a way that impassions somebody that would be in line with them. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, a lot of it I use, kind of what I mentioned before, is my journey to plant-based diet and the things that I dealt with as a kid. And I had multiple colonoscopies before I was probably 17 years old, just trying to figure out what was going on. I went, to doctors, and really for me, it was IBS. And that was, and I think there's maybe a little bit more care with that now, but back then, this was, 20 plus years ago, it was like, oh, you have IBS, and that was it. And the doctor, like, they don't give you anything. There's no like, hey, try this diet, or hey, take this. There was nothing. I was like, oh, you have IBS. That's it. And so I think that's kind of what set me on my journey to educate myself and learn more about the human body and all of that. So really for me, I like to use that approach with, my messaging and stuff, and taking and using that to encourage people to take a more empowered approach for their own health. Like, hey, it's empowering to know what's going on in your body, and you can really make empowered decisions for your health when you know what's going on in your body, because that's what it did for me.
So how did you heal? Because this is just such a great example. IBS stands for irritable bowel syndrome. Well, no shit. Yes, I know my bowels.
I know it's exactly
irritable.
Yeah,
I know this. Why are my bowels irritable, and how do I fix it? This diagnosis is so frustrating.
It is.
I don't even have it. I can't even imagine what it was like for you. So tell us a little bit about that healing journey. How did you get well? How did you empower yourself to kind of follow another path? I would love to hear.
Yeah, for sure. So I started off just eliminating dairy. Like, dairy was something I was able to pinpoint when I was pretty young, probably in high school. And now, being in high school, in college, I wasn't completely 100%, like never eating dairy, but I knew if I ate it, I knew what was going to happen. So I knew that early on that dairy was a huge culprit. Um, and I think for me, I'm a lifelong learner. I like to read, I like all of that. So I think that also helped me too, is I was always finding books on things and trying to figure out stuff for myself. So for me, it was really just playing with my diet. And then when I was maybe a little while out of college is when I really decided. I read a couple of books on a plant-based diet, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to try it. And I went cold turkey. I was like, tomorrow I'm going to be vegan. And I did. And so and I always say, I don't recommend that to people. Like, it's not for the best approach for everybody, but for me, that's just my personality. Like, I'm going to do it. So, I'm saying I'm going to do it. So I'm going to do it. So for me, I started like that. And it was probably a couple weeks in, and I realized like, oh my gosh, like my allergies have started to clear up. Like my stomach feels like what I assume a normal person's stomach feels like, so I started to recognize things. And from there, it's just, again, it's been a constant kind of trial and error for me, figuring out what things in my diet are affecting things and what makes me feel certain ways. And I think too, in that process, you become more, we talked about that awareness piece, you become more aware of your body. It's just being more in tune with your body and recognizing what's normal and what's not normal. So I think that was also part of it too, is just be more self-aware with what's going on in my body and stuff.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. The irritable bowel syndrome thing is it's so indicative of kind of like what's happening a little bit in health culture,
Yes.
in the sense that it didn't even exist as a diagnosis. Like, I don't know, I don't have the research on my tips of my fingers, but it didn't exist. Let's call it 25 years ago as a diagnosis. It's just that people kept showing up at doctor's offices with irritated bowels. Mm-hmm. And so they were like, hey, it's IBS. Hey, exactly. There's your diagnosis. Have a nice day.
Yep.
And I feel like, okay, and just like Laura, I've never had it, but I think almost every client I have ever had has it.
Yes, totally.
Whether they've been diagnosed with it, or they're like, oh, I just have to be near a bathroom at all times. It's like, that is actually no way to live your life.
Not normal. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but that is like, I don't want to use this sort of smarmy, like spin doctoring language, but that's a hook. It's like, hey, do you have to know where the bathroom is at all times? Guess what? That's not how you're supposed to live your life. And oh, by the way, here's other things that are linked to what's happening in your gut, your allergy symptoms, your whatever, brain fog, your joint pain. Like, no, like being able to connect to your story in your content marketing efforts is crucial, because clients don't really want to hear what we do.
Yeah.
They want to hear how you felt, how they feel. We need to talk about how it feels.
Exactly. Yep. It's into, I think it's also important. And I was doing this content workshop the other day, and we had a conversation about this. It's also important. Like, the transformation is huge. Like, obviously people want to hear about the transformation, but the journey to the transformation, I think, is even more powerful, and being able to talk about what happened in the middle, all the things that happened to get to that in transformation. Right. So I think it's important to include that as well.
Crucial. It's crucial.
Oh, absolutely. It's what you want, is that potential client thinking, yes, oh my God, me too. It's like we lived in a parallel universe,
Yep.
That's what drives confidence for people to, reach out to you. So you were saying most of your clients come from Facebook or Instagram, but you called it organic marketing. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes. Yeah. So, no, and I have to say, well, with my brick and mortar business, I do paid advertising, like on, social media ads, whatever. And I did dabble in it a little bit when I first started my online business. And then I realized that when you're like trying to advertise really globally, because that's what online business is, like, it's really expensive. Like, it's a different animal than when you're just doing local advertising, right, around your brick and mortar business. So I was like, okay, well, this is not going to be good. And so for me, organic just meaning, I don't pay for ads. I just do it all, in the DMs or in content, whatever. I just use my social media platforms to attract the right clients, start conversations, initiate conversations in that way.
Yeah. Do you have an enormous following?
I don't have an enormous following. No, I don't.
No. Don't need one of those.
Exactly.
Don't need to have that.
You don't.
Yeah. I think Erin can speak to that too, and how she's built her business. You're not out there spending bazillions of dollars on Facebook ads and Instagram ads or anything like that, right?
No. Well, it goes back to this IBS example. And I was just thinking of a discovery call I had with a client the other day. And he came to me because I guess he wanted to sort out his metabolism. That's kind of the space I play in. He's a triathlete and he's just bonking in his races, and he's also got some extra fat. So that's like a metabolism thing. So he reached out and he was talking to me about how like his symptoms, basically, like how he bonks in these races, like how his appetite shows up. And in just speaking with him, I'm just hearing all these metabolic dysfunction like sound bites. And I said to the guy, out of curiosity, do you ever, this is going to sound completely out of left field, do you ever have any brain fog? And he said, what? He said, yeah, like, do you ever have trouble concentrating or like staying alert or awake? He's like, oh my God, all the time. I've been plagued with that for 10 years. What do you mean? Is that related to my metabolism too? It's like, yeah, it is. It totally is. And so like, but this is the kind of stuff I speak to in my content marketing. Like, hey, I used to have to nap in my car on the way home from work because I couldn't get home without falling asleep behind the wheel. And you would not believe how many people get into my DMs like, that happens to me too.
Right.
I literally fall asleep behind the wheel of my car. I thought that was so weird. I thought I was narcoleptic. So it's literally just telling your story, like super vulnerably, putting it out there. And, also like some call to action stuff like, hey, let me know if this ever happens to you too.
Right.
And you'll be amazed.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Especially with that IBS community, just because they're everywhere.
Yes.
I feel like people struggling with irritable bowel symptoms. And also the other thing I'm seeing really chronically is people struggling with sluggish thyroid symptoms. Yep. There's some clinical for hypothyroid or something. And it's like, that's everybody these days.
It's everybody.
If you speak to what that feels like,
exactly,
that's when you get people.
Yep. That's exactly it. Yeah. And it's funny you say that. I just did I guess in November, I did like a thyroid masterclass, and really I just, I get like the intuitive download thing. And I'm like, okay, like this sounds like a good idea. And I really had no idea it was going to blow up. And I mean, people were like coming out of the woodworks talking about, I have Hashimoto's and I never know how to manage my symptoms. Like, I mean, it just spoke to people. And again, it was just talking about the symptoms. It wasn't like, hey, do you have hyperthyroidism? It was talking about the symptoms. Do you feel this? You feel this? And that's what speaks to people.
Exactly.
So this goes back to the importance of your own sort of education, the program you choose, and your ability to, I heard you use the term a couple of times. I just love learning. It doesn't mean you have to know everything by any stretch of the imagination. Right. And there are, I took my first course like 10 years ago. Back then there was like 3 to choose from. Now there's dozens.
Yep.
And people are, I don't know which to choose. And the conversation I have with these folks is, look, just, I think what you need to do is kind of create a small list of what it is you think you need to learn. And then ask those questions of the programs. And do you teach this? And one of the big missing links for some of the bigger, like more expensive coaching programs is they're missing this education. Mm-hmm. They're missing the education of how the body actually works and functions. And I can't figure out why, other than these programs are literally trying to discourage coaches from having this kind of conversation, because they want to be, I don't know, like they want to play in the clinical realm and they're afraid to kind of step on the toes of some practitioners. Right. And my thought is, look, we're not trying to practice medicine, right? But to your point, you need to know, hey, I need to refer this client out. Like something's wrong. And if I don't really understand how the body works and thinking, this doesn't make sense, something else is not right. So I guess from the standpoint of talking with, if you don't feel comfortable and if you don't know what the 3 of us are talking about based on symptoms and, hey, this sounds like it could be related to, then this is where it's pick up another book. Yeah. Listen to some podcasts. I'm not saying you got to go jump into a new program if you've already spent thousands of dollars on a program, but dig into some education and educate yourself so that you can say, wow, this sounds like if I can get this client to stop eating frickin' bagels and orange juice for breakfast and we just move towards something that's going to be a little more sustainable, awesome, versus, wow, this is out of my scope. I really need to refer this person to a practitioner.
Right. Right. Yeah, for sure. And I agree with you. And I think that's what drew me into the FDN program is I felt the same way. I felt like, I did this really extensive, certified holistic, diploma, all that stuff. And while I learned a lot, I did feel like there was like a missing piece where it's like, I feel like there's like this, like functional aspect that was missing. And again, and I agree, it's the conversations that we have in the FDN program where it's like, it totally shifts the conversations that you have with your clients.
Right. Exactly. And I've told people like, look, there's no one program that's going to give you everything you need,
Right.
but you need to start with a program that's going to give you a phenomenal base, right? A broad yet deep, phenomenal base to get started. And then as you travel down the path of the direction you want your practice to go and the people that you're working with is when you're going to be like, something's still missing, this little piece. And then you can find, perhaps it's a program, perhaps it's a book, perhaps it's a mentorship. It could be any number of things that help fill that gap for you.
Yeah.
You know, and one of the things we really push hard in our program too, is just this strong understanding of how the body actually works and functions and how it actually responds to its environment. It sounds to me like FDN is also one of these few programs that aren't afraid to sort of empower and equip coaches with the knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I did want to speak to your point on the book thing too, because I think it's also important. Is it like you're saying, it doesn't always take a new program or certification, like just educating yourself and, you want to specialize in, female hormones or whatever, like go get a few books and you can educate yourself on, what the research says and what studies have shown, and you can empower yourself and become the expert yourself rather than, spending thousands of dollars on another program.
Oh, I have 2 examples to share for that. Awesome. I had some clients who and maybe you both can relate to this, maybe not, but I've had clients who, because clients are like, some of them are a little bit savvy anyhow. Mm-hmm. So folks who struggle with like emotional eating or like reward eating, and they'll say, I don't know, I just needed that dopamine hit. And it's like, you know what? I need to understand dopamine. So I bought every audiobook, downloaded every audiobook on dopamine, and really learned about dopamine, not to become like, I'm not going to become like the dopamine health coach, but I know enough about dopamine to understand that my client's perception of how dopamine works is inaccurate. And I can say, actually, this is how dopamine works in the body. So guess what? You're not beholden to some neurochemical that you think is making you emotionally eat. Sorry,
dopamine under the bus. It's dopamine's fault, but I chose the ice cream.
Exactly. And then the other one I recently did was, so like I'm in my mid to late 40s and I'm kind of perimenopausal, but I haven't been through menopause yet. But my clients are in it. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I'm behind them.
Right.
It's like, I better figure out how figure out menopause. Like I can't wait to figure it out. I'm just going to buy all the books on menopause. I'm going to follow all the menopause experts and just really understand it. Again, not because I'm going to become a menopause coach, but this is what my clients are showing up with. That's what they're saying. And I don't want to just, I don't know, throw darts and guess, or also what I don't want to do is get stuck in a rut and say, well, I don't know anything about dopamine. So that's on you.
Right.
Here's what we really can and should. And this kind of goes back to Laura's point, of this idea of like a full education. There's a lot of programs out there that, like, one of the ones that I took won't teach nutrition. It's like, you don't need to know anything about nutrition because the client in front of you will tell you what they're feeling, which I agree with. Mm-hmm. But also I think you should know a thing or two about how the body works. Like, I just don't think we can cut corners, but as you get into practice, you'll understand what you need to shore up your knowledge on, and then just go do it.
Exactly. Yep.
No, I love that. Yeah. Listening to the client and letting them lead the way, but also being able to help. So prime example of this is like my mom, who recently has not been feeling well. I talked to her on the phone. I'm like, do you have a cold? What's going on? She's very nasally. Mm-hmm. And she said, long story short, there's multiple things going on. And she's convinced it's the change in the food where she lives. Okay. And she's convinced it's just that they've got a different meat vendor, or that it's a different, quality meat. And that's what's caused this. I'm like, I know enough about nutrition to know it's probably not the answer to everything that, perhaps that could be, so, but again, this is the point of, our clients know something's wrong.
Yes.
And they are identifying one thing that might be different. So this has got to be, and we need to know enough about the body and food to be like, maybe that's not, to Erin's point. You can't totally blame dopamine.
Yes.
The way you think,
Right. Yeah, for sure.
It's an opportunity to educate. So tell us a little bit. So your program, how do you deliver education to your clients? Is that a part of what you do? How is it structured?
Yeah.
Let's talk about your signature program.
And
how it's structured.
Yeah. So, my program is really, my program is geared towards gut health. That's kind of the approach I take and that's with the whole plant-based diet thing and healing the gut. And so the program itself, as far as like the structure, it's a mix of like recorded video, there's some PDFs, there's like downloads and all of that. And then in my like the intensive program, they get every other week, they get a one-on-one session, and we go over, you know, their protocol and their lab results and kind of track how they're doing. And so each week, you know, when we have our one-on-one session, we kind of go in sync with the modules. I think I have 6 modules in the program, and it kind of goes in sync with the modules. So I do give them a little bit of education. Like we talk about macronutrients, and we talk about where to find those on a plant-focused diet. And we talk about, you know, eating for proper energy and lowering inflammation, all this. So there is a piece where I want to, and that's really my goal too with my programs is, because again, like I said, that's really what helped me in my journey was educating myself. So I want to be that for them, to educate themselves on the foods that they put in their body, what's going on in their body, while they're feeling the things they're feeling. And so having that education component with the, hey, let's fix this and that with your diet and do all these other things to help heal your body.
Cool.
Awesome. So it's 6 modules.
Mm-hmm.
Is it 6 weeks or 12 weeks? I heard you say you're meeting.
Actually, I want to say, so here's the other thing I started, and I think this is important for people listening to know too, is that you can change things whenever you want.
Exactly. Yes.
And so I started out with, actually it's my very first one that I made for just my brick and mortar studio was 8 weeks. And I'm like, okay, it's not too much of a commitment, but it's long enough to like, can I get people results, you know? And then as I kind of got deeper into my education, I was like, okay, it's not quite long enough. So then I went to 12 weeks. And then after I did the FDN, there's like, you know, you have to give some leeway for like the testing and the results. So 16 weeks is my intensive program. It's 4 months. So I actually think I did make it to 8 modules because it's a new module every other week. So yeah, 16 weeks seems, and really, I think, you know, 90 to 120 days, in my opinion, is really good enough time for people to be able to implement things you want them to implement, to start seeing results, because that's really what, I mean, you want them to build the confidence to see that things are working. Yeah. And I think if you make it too short, then it's like, well, I haven't really seen anything. I don't know if it's going to work. And then they just give up.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
So do you deliver that in an online course of some kind?
I do. Mm-hmm. Nice. Yes.
Okay. Good. Like a video? Is it video? Is it text?
Yeah, I have both. Yeah. So there's videos, there's PDFs, there's all the things.
So every other week, so they get a new module every other week. So is the goal then that they're really practicing what they've learned for a 2-week period, right? Really give them the opportunity to build
Exactly. Yeah. Let it sink in, put it into practice. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Because I see a lot of programs out there too, where a lot of times this stuff is delivered so quickly. Mm-hmm. It's like there's a change in focus so often that sometimes I think you're going to, depending on where a client is in their journey, they're either going to be really hungry for that, like what's next, because they're super motivated. Mm-hmm. And then there's others that they're motivated because they feel like garbage, but they're so freaking exhausting.
Yep.
And so you try to throw too much at them too fast, and you lose them. So, you're absolutely right. I think I'm assuming that your program too, you can kind of tailor to kind of where that person is a little bit.
Sure.
That's the whole point of the coaching conversation, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah, definitely.
Well, yeah, the coaching conversation typically in those situations is where the personalization comes in, right? Like I think it's a really smart idea for a coach who's created a signature program to put it into an online curriculum. I will scream that from the rooftops. Like you can learn the technology, even if you think you're not technology, you can learn it. It's not even that hard. Mm-hmm. And that takes the client through an educational journey. And then when they show up on the coaching call, that's a client-led conversation. Right. So that's where the personalization comes in.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
Great.
I love it. So so you've got your brick and mortar business, you've got your online practice. Right now, they're 2 separate legal businesses, and you like it that way. That's working really well for you. Do you have any thoughts about what's next, or are you pretty fat and happy right now with the way that you're going? And things are really going, and because that's a great place to be.
Totally.
And I want to just encourage people to be like, hey, if you're there, enjoy it. You don't have to always be reaching for the next pinnacle, but I'd love to hear kind of where you are.
Yeah. So I don't know how familiar y'all are with human design, but I am a manifesting generator. And so I like to do all the things. Like that's just who I am. So I am always, that's just my mind. I'm always looking to what I'm going to do next. So my goal really in 2022 really is to integrate more of these together. And so just before COVID, I guess maybe the year before COVID, I franchised my studio. So it's like this franchisable model. And so that was really kind of the goal over the last couple of years, is to really nail down what I wanted my nutrition business to look like and be able to integrate that into the franchise model. And so that's really my goal for the upcoming year, is to really work to solidify how these two will integrate together into this franchisable model for my studio, and be able to offer like this, basically just this wellness space. People, you come in to work out, you can get your, nutrition, all the things in this one spot.
Ooh, that's
cool.
Awesome.
So are you going to encourage people that buy into the gym franchise to go get certified through FDN, or are they going to do something through you somehow?
Yeah. So that's kind of what's in the works. So I'm trying to figure out logistics of that, but really and truly, because right now it's working so far, because I have one franchise location. And so far it's working where I just have like nutrition coaches on staff, and it looks, different in different capacities, but at least having one nutrition coach on staff at each location. And then, for now, until I need to hire more coaches or more FDNs or whatever, kind of have just me as like the overarching, like nutrition whatever person that's in charge of like the, nutrition coaches at each location.
Head coach. That's very cool.
Yeah.
That's really exciting. I love that. I love that business model. That takes a lot of imagination and energy. So
it does.
Thank you. You know what gets me excited, and how about it, Erin, is the more and more guests that we speak to are coaches who are now in a position to hire other coaches.
Yes.
This is a growing trend, people listening, so for those of you that are either struggling to start your own business, maybe people listening aren't even coaches yet. They're going through a program, or they're just coaching curious. They haven't done anything. And you're wondering what the opportunities are, because I get this question a lot, like, what jobs are out there? Mm-hmm. I don't want to start my own business. What jobs are out there? There's so many, and it's growing now. It is. Yeah. And I would venture to say that some of the smaller businesses like yours give coaches that want to work for somebody else the opportunity to kind of have the best of both worlds. I mean, Erin and I work for, our school. It's a small company. And so everything we do makes a difference. Mm-hmm. And, a very, everything we do is felt by this company, and we have a tremendous amount of influence on the growth of this business. Yeah. So there's something very rewarding in that. Absolutely. Without you having to take on all the risk. Folks,
yeah, for sure.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, there's always opportunities without you having to go start your own thing, for sure.
I love it. So tell us where people can find you. I would also just love some parting wisdom from you on what you would say to coaches who are coming up the hill behind you, that are trying to figure out their space in this world. And,
I think my biggest piece of wisdom, I guess, I won't say advice, just from going on my own like inner journey over the past couple of years, is really do what feels right. Like you don't have to follow anybody. You don't have to follow any rules. You can make your own rules and do it how you want to do it. And, when you are able to like step into your power is really when you step into your purpose, just knowing like, I'm doing this because this is what feels in alignment for me. And this is what feels right. And don't worry if everybody's telling you the way that you're doing it is wrong. As long as you feel like you're in alignment with what you're doing and it feels right, then that's what you should be doing.
Ooh, very lovely. All right. Where can folks find and follow you?
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram. It's at the Hope Pedraza. And then I also have a Facebook group. It's Live Wholesome and Healthy. And that's really where, I go live, and we have workshops and masterclasses and a way to get a lot of good free content.
Awesome. This is great. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all of your insights as a practicing coach. We love talking to coaches.
Yes. Thank y'all so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Hope.
Thank you.
This podcast was brought to you by Primal Health Coach Institute. To learn more about how to become a successful health coach, get in touch with us by visiting primalhealthcoach.com/call. Or if you're already a successful health coach, practitioner, influencer, or thought leader with a thriving business and an interesting story, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us at hello@primalhealthcoach.com and let us know why we need to interview you for Health Coach Radio. Thanks for listening.